All right, MSP leaders, we're here to talk about a metric multiplier today. Now, if you've ever heard service salaries to service revenue, also commonly called the W-2 multiplier, you know that that metric measures how much our service team costs against the revenue that it generates. Then we have utilization, which really tells us how well utilized our team is for their job function. Now, both these metrics are great and they'll help you get an idea of how effective your team is. But these metrics don't work super well in a vacuum by themselves, right? Because other things can come into play to really throw these metrics off, and you think that you're trying to drive change from a utilization or from a service salary to service revenue report, and you're really making things worse. So how can we look at these together to form a super metric, right? So that we can really invoke change in our organizations. So let's start with defining these metrics a little bit. Now, service salaries to service revenue, we're typically targeting 33%, meaning for every dollar of revenue that comes in the door, that's service-based revenue, right? We can spend 33 cents on service team labor. Now, the flip side of this is the W-2 multiplier, and it says whatever you're paying in W-2, you want to multiply that by 3, and that's your target revenue. So however you're looking at this, it's going to give you that 1/3 result. And in utilization, we're targeting 75%. So that means 75% of the time, our team members should be working on job roles, job functions. And the other 25% can be downtime or non-specific role function time, like team meetings and other things like that. Now, these metrics don't work super well independently. I mean, they're good indicators, but we really shouldn't make sweeping change based on either one of these numbers. But when we combine them, we can make real impact and really start to nail down where the problem. Now, first things first, if our time entry is off in any way, or if we're not doing 100% of the things that we've promised to do in our agreements, it's going to throw off these numbers and have us make bad decisions. So if your time entry isn't nailed down, let's attack that first. And if we're not doing 100% of what we promised to do for our clients, let's attack that, I guess, first and a half or second. You pick the order, whatever most important to you. Now, once we have that nailed down, we can start looking at it. And so diving into this metric multiplier, if we look at a situation where our service salaries to service revenue is high, meaning it's good, right? And our utilization is good, we're typically going to have a really good service department gross profit. Because what it's telling us is we're in line with our service labor to our service revenue, and we're keeping people busy. We're not overworking them. We're not stressing them out to the point that a single metric alone can drive you to. Second is when we have a low service salaries to service revenue and a low utilization. Not surprising, that's a major problem. We probably have a pricing and efficiency and time entry and maybe even a staffing bench problem. So our first thing in that scenario is to tackle utilization. If we tackle service salaries to service revenue first, a lot of times we'll say, well, maybe we need to reduce our staff count, and that can hurt utilization if we don't know what that is. Now, the third scenario is we have a bad service salary to service revenue, but we have good utilization. This typically points directly to pricing. We are typically underpricing that situation, because we're keeping people effectively busy, but we're not generating the revenue to support the staffing levels. This could also be training or efficiency or some other things, but at the end of the day, a lot of times this falls into that pricing or efficiency category. And last is the one that I call the gold standard, right? It's when our service salaries to service revenue is at a good spot, but our utilization is a little low. Now, a lot of MSP owners will start attacking that utilization problem, saying, why is our utilization at 70%? I want 75%. Let's do more, right? We have to look at this from a capacity lens, meaning if our service salaries to service revenue are good and our utilization is low, we are being very efficient, very effective. And we can typically take on more work, which is going to shift our service salary to service revenue down, or in the W-3 world up, right, in a good direction to balance out that utilization. And we'll continue to drive that mismatch, which is actually a very good thing, through rolling out AI solutions, rolling out RPA solutions. Maybe even partnering up with a SOC or NOC to handle after hours or some level 1 support, so you can have your team looking at advisory work, which is really going to shift that number even further because it's high revenue, should be lower time investment. But that's really it. So when we're thinking of service salaries to service revenue and we're thinking of utilization, really try not to look at those as independent metrics. Look at them as a metric that can combine together to really point you in a good direction. If they're both up, you're in a pretty good spot. You could probably work on some efficiency, but you're in a pretty good spot. If they're both down, start with utilization, work yourself back into service salaries and service revenue. If your service salary, service revenue is down, but utilization is in a good spot, right? We probably have a pricing issue, maybe an efficiency or training issue. We can focus on that first, pricing, then training. And last but not least, if our service salaries to service revenue is in a good spot and our utilization is low, we have won the golden ticket, and we really want to look to see what are we doing differently? How can we maximize this efficiency and this automation, and how can we bring on new capacity without bringing on a lot more service labor? I'm Jim Peterson, Principal Solution Advisor at ConnectWise, and I'm here to help, so hit me up.